So I'm Ian Firth, and I'm originally from England, from Yorkshire in the north of England. I'm living in Athens, Georgia, where I've been for over 30 years. My current job, I'm retired. I'm a professor emeritus at the University of Georgia, and I've been retired for 7 years. Being English, I was involved from a very young age. I was raised in a suburb of a northern city, Leeds, looking out onto a patch of ground which was in fact part of a medieval monastery, a grange of a monastery. And when I was about 14, the city council in its wisdom decided to bulldoze the entire area and build housing all over it without any reference whatsoever to the historic qualities, let alone the environmental qualities of that farmland. And I think that made obviously an enormous impression on me. And so when I became interested in geography, history, it seemed to lend itself straight away to being involved with landscapes and their preservation. When I came to Georgia to teach at the university, I got involved with a very interesting character over at the Institute of Ecology, an ecologist who was interested in historic landscapes. Her name was Susan Bratton, and she invited me to bring a class down to Cumberland Island off the coast of Georgia and start work on looking at some of the historic landscapes associated with the Carnegies on Cumberland Island. We had lots of interesting adventures. And I started to approach historic landscapes with a very strong ecological interest because of Susan's involvement. And I think that was a really good start into the field, because it always bothers me the separation between natural and cultural, and the difference between an ecological perspective and historical perspective, when they are obviously complementary and bound together and should remain bound together. It's the interaction between the ecology and the history that really interests me. And so that was a very good start into the field over here in America. Currently, this past year I've been working again on the Blue Ridge Parkway, this time working on a cultural landscape report for one of the recreation areas, Mount Pisgah. And I've also been involved in working on a much smaller scale, a farm in North Georgia, the Shields Etheridge Farm, which the Alliance visited when it came to Athens a few years ago, where we've been developing an interpretation program and trying to avoid the traps of putting signs over places which really should be seen in their original condition rather than with the interpretation being so obvious. And I was asked to get involved with a very interesting project in northwest Georgia, one of these folk art gardens, and Howard Finster's garden, Paradise Gardens, and went and looked at it and thought it was absolutely fascinating. Unfortunately, it's in a terrible condition, and it needs an enormous amount of money spending on it if it's going to be restored in any significant way. So thinking about how to do that without restoring it has been a real challenge, and decided that perhaps with all of this technology that's now available to us, we don't need to restore it. But I've succeeded in getting the School of Environmental Design, or College of Environmental Design as it now is, involved in this, and I don't think I'm going to play much of a role, but I think conceptually it's one of the most interesting projects that I've been involved with in the last year. My first meeting of the that I attended was 1991 in I'm hesitating now, in Maine, Acadia. And I went to the meeting because I was working on a project which involved carriage roads at the Moses Cone Estate on the Blue Ridge Parkway. and I was very interested in the carriage roads that the Rockefellers had built on Acadia. So I went up with that rather narrow focus and discovered that the Alliance was a much more interesting organization than I had given it credit for, and got involved in a lot of very interesting conversations about all sorts of topics other than carriage roads, though the carriage roads were very interesting as well. That same meeting we went on to Canada, and I think the connection with Canada is one of the great strengths of the Alliance. I think first and foremost it is that opportunity for informal conversations with people from different backgrounds, stimulated by the environment that you're in, which very varied environments that we've been in the last 20 years.